Inuvik is pitching itself as a strategic location for development in the Arctic. It comes amidst a changing global order and a push by Canada to secure its north. Inuvik Mayor Peter Clarkson says the town and the country would benefit from military investment in the community. He has a long history in Inuvik and in municipal politics, where he first served as mayor in 2000. We spoke earlier about what's changed since he was last mayor and what challenges and opportunities lie ahead for the community. Peter, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you, and thank you for coming up to Inuvik.
This isn't your first term as mayor. You're about almost halfway through this term, but you have had this job before, and I'm just wondering what has changed since your last go as mayor in the 2000s.
Yeah, so my last go as mayor in 2006, which was 18 years ago when I became mayor in November of 2024. The big thing that's changed is back in the early 2000s, we had a lot of oil and gas work going on here, and so it was a busy time as far as outside employment and people able to get work and things like that, and so that's changed now. We've got a little bit of oil and gas work with the N.W.T Sustainable Energy Project and bringing natural gas to Inuvik, and then some reclamation work, but nothing like there was in the early 2000s. But what is happening now is all of the Arctic security, Arctic sovereignty, all of that is taking place. And of course, Inuvik is the furthest west airport in Canada that can land fighter planes, can land larger planes, and we're only 2,000 kilometers from the Russian border. And so we're close to China, we're close to Russia. So strategically, Inuvik is a very strategic place for Arctic security and Arctic sovereignty. So that's probably one of the biggest changes. We've got some other changes as far as aging infrastructure and looking at what can be done to make sure this complex doesn't sink into the permafrost, what we can do to keep our roads and our water sewer. But all of that's also taking place.
And that was a whole bunch of things I wanted to talk to you about. So this is a great springing off point. Because we ended on infrastructure, I'll start there as well. There is aging infrastructure here, right? It's something we face in a lot of places in the north. You mentioned the thawing permafrost and the problems that presents. What about the utilidor system specifically? How's that doing? And is it in need of replacement soon?
Well, we're replacing it all the time because that utilidor system was built in the mid to late 50s, 1960s. So a lot of it is aging. A lot of it's still in good shape, but we've replaced probably 30 to 40% of it, maybe a bit more with we've added new infrastructure as far as the utilidor system. But because it's mostly all above ground, we've had some issues with the pilings that it's on because they were all wood pilings back in the 50s and 60s. So we're looking at replacing whatever we can at the same time, building new so that we can add a new subdivision and so that, we've got service lots for people to buy and build houses. So we're always replacing, and we've been doing about $3 million a year. We had a big bump when we did the subdivision on Carmichael and Firth and Reliance Street. It was $7.4 million that year, so that set us back a little bit. But there's a need to replace that every year, and so we're slowly working on replacing the old utilidors and putting in the new steel pilings, new utilidors. But that's about $10,000 a meter. So if you're doing a lot, just to get the utilidor system to your lot is about $200,000. And that's without doing anything else. That's no gas, no power, no road. So development is a lot. And so it has to be subsidized. Nobody's going to buy an empty lot for $250,000 and then build a house on top of that. So we've been able to get territorial money, federal money, in order to subsidize the development of those lots. And as a result, the town is the only developer. Nobody's going to come in and develop those lots like you would, for example, in Yellowknife, because at $250,000 a lot, you're not going to find many buyers.
It puts you in a unique situation. I'll switch now to some of the military, the Arctic sovereignty you were talking about. I know that Yellowknife and Inuvik had kind of signed an agreement to try to lobby for more military infrastructure. It was a relatively recent agreement, but I'm just wondering what has come of that agreement and what the kind of overall wishes are with that agreement.
Yeah, the main focus of the agreement is sharing information between the city of Yellowknife and the town of Inuvik, because we felt by sharing that information on what we were hearing from D&D and other sources, we would both be in a better position. And so far, that's worked great. We've got a great working relationship with Mayor Hendrickson and his senior staff, and we've been able to share information so that we keep up to date. But what we're seeing as D&D looks at getting to their 2%, maybe their 3.5, and eventually the 5%, there's going to be billions of dollars spent in the Canadian Arctic. And because Inuvik has a strategic airport, and because Yellowknife has a strategic airport, we'll see a lot of that money focused at the airport. We're not likely going to see the military bases that we would have seen in the 50s and 60s, because I don't think the threat is a foot soldier threat. I think it's more in the air with satellites, and so that's why the focus has been on getting the airports ready and then getting strategically ready with the aircraft that are needed for that.
And do you think that any of that, I mean, one of the big questions always when it comes to military infrastructure in the North is how can it also help communities, right? Do you think that that's a path that will be, do you think that's a path we'll go down, or do you think it will mainly be, airport, which does help civilians, but not as much as, say, building buildings or roads would?
Yeah, so we're in an active discussion with D&D, and I went down to the Arctic Security Working Group meeting in Yellowknife in November, and with some ideas on, okay, here's some potential options for what they're calling multi-use infrastructure. So one of them definitely the airport. The airport, the runway's longer, civilian aircraft can use it. We can land more safely, especially in the wintertime when the runway is a bit slick, because it went from 6,000 feet to it'll go to 9,000 feet. So that allows the jets to come in a lot easier and a lot safer. But we're looking at things, redundancy as bulk water fill up, because all of the airport is on pump in, pump out. So the military is going to need a good service as far as filling trucks in order to bring the water out to the airport. So that's one potential. We would add another bulk water fuel station at the water tower. Another idea was the Rangers, Coast Guard Auxiliary, Ground Search and Rescue. Doesn't really have a place to operate out of. We've got a couple of sea cans in one of our yards, but the town was looking at building a new heated garage, warm storage, cold storage, and we said, look, we could add on to that and have a base for the Coast Guard Rangers, Coast Guard Auxiliary, and Ground Search and Rescue, which is also part of D&D, and that would be a win-win for both groups. One, the Rangers would be ready; they'd have a place to mob and demob out of, and the town would get the use of a new heated garage. So that's another avenue we're following. Another one was we don't have a water source at the airport. So if there's a major structure fire, we can go out with our trucks full of water, maybe some water trucks, but there's no water source there. And so with D&D building potentially up to 4 new hangars with the infrastructure they also have there, we're looking at what can we do to get water out of a nearby lake or maybe out of Airport Lake that both D&D's firefighters and our firefighters could then use. So there's a few examples of what we're looking at that could be shared infrastructure and benefit the community and as well benefit D&D.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Nope, that's great. Thank you very much.